there, once again. Welcome back to the Lightsaber Lounge Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Scott McDonald, and this is our second episode of kind of back from hiatus, so we're all happy to be here. I got my regular co-host with me today, Sudhir. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back.
Jesus.
Hello.
And Tony, welcome back.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, in the last episode, we talked about George Lucas. That was a lot of fun. I think we, hail to George Lucas. He created everything. We get to do this podcast.
There you go.
So if that's all he did, we're grateful. So in this episode, I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about Stormtroopers and Clone Troopers. I mean, we love to mock them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Clone Troopers more than...
Stormtroopers
Stormtroopers more than Clone Troopers.
Yeah. They're such an important part of the Star Wars kind of lore and vibe. And I mean, they're iconic in their own right.
Yeah.
They've been around since the very first movie. We all thought they were just fantastic.
Yeah.
But as the Star Wars stories progressed over time, the way we look at them has really changed. And the more we learn about where they came from, what was really going on, it starts to raise a lot of questions. And
There's a few
on
ethical ones.
multiple levels. Yes. So I thought we'd get into that today. So it's kind of an interesting debate. So they both serve as military forces. They look essentially the same, but they're quite unique, different groups of soldiers within the Star Wars universe. Their origins, like I said, their purpose, and these moral implications are very different. The big question for me is to what degree do they bear individual responsibility in all the stuff that they're doing? Killing and maiming. I mean, stormtroopers are kind of useless, but when we see later of them just ruthlessly killing villagers and things of that nature. It gets much darker in subsequent films. Are they both Clone Troopers and Stormtroopers? Are they simply following orders and absolved from any moral culpability? And is there a difference in those two groups? In that regard, we're going to talk about that. The other important question we want to talk about is: are they just disposable soldiers, similar to at first they're just like the droid army? Yeah, they're like whatever.
Roger.
Yeah, or are they individuals with rights and feelings?
Yeah.
So we'll get into that. Okay, so in case any of our listeners aren't totally clear on the difference between clone troopers and stormtroopers, I'll do a quick overview for you. In the Star Wars chronological timeline, this is different from the order they came out of the movies. This is how it transpired through time. Clone troopers came first. Thousands of them were more or less manufactured through cloning technology and genetic manipulation on the planet Kamino, and were clone copies of the bounty hunter Jango Fett. And they're basically designed to be obedient soldiers and specifically programmed to follow orders without question. Their main purpose was to provide a large, significant army to help the Jedi and the Galactic Republic fight the Separatists, who were, of course, being manipulated by Darth Sidious / Senator Palpatine. So essentially, at this point, the clone troopers were actually the good guys. But of course, they would eventually turn against the Jedi with the embedded secret Order 66, which was all part of Palpatine's grand plan to kill all the Jedi in the galaxy. Stormtroopers, on the other hand, were just individual people rather than clones. This came about after the Jedi were eliminated by Darth Sidious, and Sidious became Emperor and created the Galactic Empire, the evil empire as we know it. The powers that be within the Empire decided that they could avoid this enormous cost of creating clones due to their short lifespan, of course. They kept having to make more and more of them by just recruiting people from all the various planets they now ruled. Over time, of course, the idea of recruitment, quote unquote, changed to conscription against people's will, and eventually even taking children away from their families and brainwashing them at a young age. The primary purpose of stormtroopers was to maintain control, enforce the rule of the Empire, and then eventually the First Order, and suppress any opposition or rebellion. They weren't genetically engineered or programmed like the clones, but they did undergo extensive indoctrination and conditioning to ensure loyalty. This, of course, raises questions about the extent to which they have the ability to exercise free will and make independent moral choices. So just to start off the conversation, I'll ask you this question. In the original series of movies, did you ever think about stormtroopers as being individuals with feelings?
I just thought
when
they
I
were
was a kid,
they were just robots, or who cares?
No,
I thought they were robots. When
yeah,
I was a
I
kid.
think a few
thought they
people
were
did think
robots.
that.
Yeah,
I thought that they were people, but I just thought they were really
Yeah,
bad
same.
aims.
Yeah.
They just could not
Well,
hit
because of the
anybody for the life
helmets.
of them.
That's
Yeah.
why you can't really see.
No.
So it's like,
They're kind of
Yeah.
stupid.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we never really thought about. They were just stormtroopers. I didn't give it a second.
It's
thought.
just an army, right? Like that's just like what it is. Like some people die, some people survive, right? So,
Yeah.
So they were just. I saw them. They were just cogs in this evil machine.
Yeah, they were just the foot soldiers
Yeah.
who kind of had to get stuff done,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I always saw them. And they were just like bad guys,
Yeah.
and they were just like mean because they had to be mean and they were part of the empire. But when you think about it more and more, you get into these little stories of like stormtroopers and just how regular people they were.
Yeah.
There's actually a few fan films that have been done through Unreal Engine, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think
where
I've seen
there's
those,
daily lives of the stormtrooper, and it's silly and it's
really
funny,
cool, yeah.
and it's just, but it's like, yeah, they're kind of just regular people,
For stormtroopers,
Yeah.
for sure, yeah.
Well, I guess it was on purpose that we never saw. They were faceless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We never saw them without a helmet on.
Yeah.
So you never really identified or had empathy for them as human beings
Yeah.
because I mean, I knew they probably were, but I just never really cared.
But I think, do people usually tend to care about like the henchmen of the bad guys? Like, I mean, really, that's what they are. They're the henchmen of the bad guys.
Not really, yeah.
And all you care about is just like the rebel soldiers and the good guys. And
Yes.
oh my God, they killed that rebel guy.
Yeah.
Those mean people, and that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think that's the difference between some of the Clone Wars, the clone troopers and the stormtroopers. Like you actually saw the stormtroopers and you saw the different personalities, so you started to care a bit more. There was a transition. I think there was a transition between the clone troopers to the stormtroopers. I can't remember if it was on Rebels or Clone Wars, where you do see some of the new stormtroopers
Yes.
people without
Yes.
wearing
Yeah.
their helmet.
Right.
But eventually, it's like there's still that you see them as bad guys, and then that's all you care, right?
Well,
So-
I did see. I think it might have been in Bad Batch. There's a scene where stormtrooper recruits. They have no helmet on. They're kind of just getting their uniforms and stuff. And one guy was just like, "Well, I come from this war-ravaged planet with no opportunities. I never get
that's
off
right,
there.
that's right,
So
yeah,
it was a
yeah.
chance for me to get off that
do
planet,
something different,
and do something, and have a meal and roof over my head, kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Which is where a lot of even in our reality, a lot of
that's what
soldiers come
happens.
from.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, in America, a lot of people go there for school.
Yeah.
Right. Like where I come from in Venezuela, people is like you either be a criminal or you go to the military. But then you become a criminal when you're in the military
Right.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, Tony, what did you? Did you have any like empathy for stormtroopers, or were we just like all of us, just like whatever?
So the original movie, Star Wars, like A New Hope, I like I said, I thought they were robots. So there was no, then when I was a child, there's no real big deal there. But I think that maybe part of the reason behind that is so that the audience doesn't have that empathy. That's why they're masked and everything. I think that was probably a decision of Lucas, and it was also probably a decision so that they didn't have to hire as many extras.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So when did your perception change regarding who was really behind these trooper masks?
My perception changed between the original trilogy and the sequels, the last three. I really liked how I think in the sequels they humanized them a lot. Like I loved the scene in Force Awakens where Kylo Ren's spazzing in the room, and the two come around the corner like, whoop, nope,
And they just turn
Yeah,
around.
just turn around.
leave, right?
Totally,
So
yeah.
I think I like what they've done with them. And then the other scene in I think it's Mandalorian where the two they're sitting there.
They're talking to each other
in the desert. They're trying to shoot the can.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
guy can't hit it.
I think that was Jason
So-
Sudeikis, apparently.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the guys.
So,
Yeah, and somebody else. I can't remember exactly,
And
but there's-
another SNL guy.
yeah.
Yeah. That was quite funny because you wonder, what did they just talk about hanging out?
Yeah, exactly.
So they did make them slightly more human.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is by making Finn like you see his dilemma and what he went through and stuff like that to get out of it. I think that was kind of when I kind of sat there and looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, I guess they are just regular people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And because unless they humanize them for you, you're not going to think about it. I think.
No.
I mean, they're cool to look at. Like,
Sure.
I love the toys. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to have so many
Yeah,
Stormtroopers.
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted them all. But yeah, no, totally.
So when we get to the, like, say, for the clone troopers, then when we get to the Clone Wars,
Yeah.
we see them without helmets. We see them just, even though they're clones, we see
Yeah.
faces,
Yeah.
and they talk and they interact
Well,
with each
they all-
other.
yeah, they have different
Have
personalities, too.
personalities.
Yeah.
So did you feel more empathy for the clone troopers than you did the stormtroopers?
For sure, 100%. At least, yeah, because it's. I mean, maybe not all of them, but at least
Yeah.
the main characters.
Yeah.
You like Rex and the other
Yeah.
guys, Wolf and whatever. You wanted them to survive because they were part of like the good guys with
Yeah.
the Jedi Order and whatnot.
And
So,
I think
yeah.
that's kind of the thing is because we don't really. I don't know how many people get that distinction between clone troopers and Star Wars and stormtroopers and all of that.
Stormtroopers, yeah.
So when you're watching the Clone Wars and you're seeing these guys and they're the good guys and you see them sort of going through all of this, you're like, yeah, but then they turn bad. Like that's the only perception that you think of, right? Because then we go into Star Wars and stuff like that. And it's like this. Well, it kind of makes it a bit of a sad sort of storyline for them,
Yeah,
and for the
totally,
stormtroopers
yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah.
Because they eventually turn quote unquote bad, but they're just people doing their job.
They just
really, at the
following
end of the day.
orders, but and that's it. That's
As
the
they
whole
were
thing.
programmed to do.
Yeah, they were created to follow orders, but some of them they go and like, especially after Order 66, and they realize it's like, you know what, like we might be the good guys, but it doesn't feel like we are the good guys. And the stuff that we're doing is, and we're hurting our own clones, our own friends, and that's not supposed to happen, right? So yeah.
I mean, I think I had empathy for them, and then I started watching, like, before Order 66 happened, and then when I'm watching them die by the hundreds in battles, and I was like, yeah, this is really sad. Because they had sort of like, because they were programmed and conditioned to have this obedience and no fear of death and compliance. But they were still individuals with personalities and different names.
Yeah.
So that felt kind of sad. But then Order 66 happened, and then my perception of them totally changed.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh my God.
They're
Are they evil now, or they're just, like you said, obeying orders?
Yeah, but to a certain degree, you kind of come away with this. Well, they're just mindless clones.
I wouldn't call them mindless, though.
But that's After
yeah.
Order 66, that's kind of what it feels like.
I mean, yes, up to a certain point, because you do realize that they were basically there from the very beginning as a plan from Palpatine to take over and kill all the Jedi.
Yeah.
So they obviously had something in them that will turn them into whatever it is, into the assassins that they became.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's hard though, because you do see the same faces, but you know they're different people.
Yeah.
They have their own personalities,
Yeah.
and so it's
I
a
think
bit sad.
That's again, that goes to writing and how they're portrayed and stuff like that. The ability to take somebody who looks exactly the same as someone else in the exact same show, but then give them their own personality. I mean, that just goes to
And
good
their own
writing.
voices
And
too,
their own
right?
voices,
So
yeah, that's
everybody,
right.
every single one
Same
has
voice.
a different voice.
Yeah.
It's the same person,
Personality,
but
yeah.
they have different voices, right?
Yeah,
So
their own personality and
Yeah,
stuff like that. I
yeah.
mean, that's amazing writing and good on them for being able to create that.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with that, you kind of have to look at it from the story point of view. It's like, how do you, if they were like normal people, how do you like live with yourself after going through and seeing all these things? It's so mind boggling, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's where I think there's a disconnect, because if you're going to create a super soldier that it has no fear and will always follow orders, regardless of what's in their best interest,
Right.
or the interest of others,
Sure.
then you're really making a psychopath.
Yeah.
And so
basically,
when you look at you look at Clone Wars and you look at the Bad Batch and the personalities and the characters they develop, they're not psychopaths.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of and so when you ask the question, how do you live with yourself? Like, I don't know that they've actually
If they're able
squared that cube quite yet.
Right.
Right. So because clone troopers didn't have a choice of becoming soldiers, they were just bred and molded into being soldiers from birth. And they're bound by their genetic programming does this absolve them from any individual responsibility for their actions or moral culpability?
I think it comes down to how do you believe them as, okay, they go through all that, but how much of a autonomous person are they? Because if they are autonomous, then yeah, they're responsible. But if they aren't, then they're not. That's how I look at it. Like for me, it's a bit of a black and white thing, because if they're programmed to follow orders, and if they're programmed with Order 66, and having watched that one episode with Ahsoka and all of that, they completely turned on Ahsoka, and they're just like, okay, well, we got to kill her. That's it. There's like literally like 2 episodes ago, you were all putting
together,
your paint on your
helmets and stuff.
We stand with Ahsoka. Oh, but now we got to kill her. So. To me, it's kind of like, well, yeah, they aren't culpable, but they can't be allowed out in public because of that, because of you don't know what's going to happen, right? So, yeah, that's kind of just, I guess that's how I look at it.
I'd say they're not culpable because, and this is, and I'm sorry to kind of bring my military background into this, but there's different kinds of orders, right?
Yeah.
You can say, they're programmed to follow all orders, but if they're not programmed to identify what's a lawful order and what's an unlawful order, then they can't be culpable. If it's just all orders, you're not culpable.
Right.
An unlawful order is something that's like basically manifestly evil. Like Order 66 would be an unlawful order.
Yeah.
But then they couldn't control that, right? So it's like they had something that they totally changed their personality, and then
they don't have any ability to turn down any order, so they're not culpable.
But then also you see the clones that actually were able to go past that Order 66 and realize, oh, this is not a good thing.
Yeah.
What we did wasn't good, or he's like, I'm not gonna do it. Like the Bad Batch clones that they were able to take stuff out of their brains. So, yeah.
And I understand from from Bad Batch, the main reason there was because that group of 5 was experimentally engineered to have sort of heightened skills, and the experiment, the way they were totally different than the rest of the clones. So that process reduced that compliance component. They had a sort of a much less version of it, other than Crosshair, who was still.
Well, he explains later that he wanted to be there because he thought that he was doing the right thing.
Yes,
right. Even though he was mistaken, right?
And I guess that is the interesting part of it. It was not like they even processed that they're doing something bad. It's like, I'm doing the right thing because I was ordered to do it. So they had no inner conflict.
Yeah, which is funny.
So then when we cross over to Stormtroopers, who were recruited from various backgrounds, or shall we say conscripted, so it suggests a level of individuality and personal history there. So does the extensive indoctrination and conditioning of Stormtroopers absolve them of moral responsibility for their actions? Or should they be held accountable for their choices, or were they just following orders without question as well?
It depends. Because if they're being indoctrinated, then you're like basically brainwashing them to believe in something that is maybe not true. And then whatever orders they follow, is like Tony said, sometimes like some people, even if they give you an order, you realize like, hey, that's not good. I'm not going to do that. But if you're indoctrinated enough to think that what you're doing is correct, it's the right thing to do, then, I mean, you're still culpable for it, but is it really your fault?
From my
didn't work for the Nazis.
There you go.
Only following the orders.
Yeah. But like, here's the thing: is I kind of always had this feeling that with the Stormtroopers, it was based around fear to a certain degree, right? Because you had fear of, well, Darth Vader, of course, that was,
he's like, he can kill you.
And all these other higher ups who were just, if you didn't follow the orders, you're going to die. So, but for me, with the Stormtroopers, like during the original series, I think for them, it is, they are culpable, in my opinion, because while yes, you are afraid that something bad's going to happen to you if you don't follow those orders, you know full well that these are not good things to do.
Good orders.
Yes.
And again, when you're dealing with the sequel trilogy, because they were brainwashed, I don't know what made Finn kind of break his brainwashing or whatever. They don't ever get into that.
Right.
So I feel like those ones, the First Order troopers, aren't completely culpable to a degree. For me, I think it is a little bit murkier, but I don't know.
It might be a case of just enormous attrition in the stormtrooper ranks, that they were just recruiting people with, and they were kind of put on duty with much less training, much like they didn't have time to indoctrinate them for years.
Yeah.
So it was like a basic training and out you go. So maybe they were just had much less brainwashing going on.
Well, some of the people that were going into the Empire that were not clone troopers. I mean, like Sabine was part of the Empire at some point, and then she helped create a weapon that could destroy the Mandalorian armor.
Right.
Even though she was Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But then she realized that what she was doing wasn't right.
Right.
So there are people out there that are like that. They're regular people that realize like what they did or what they're doing is not the right thing to do, and so they go in. So hope that will happen.
I mean, it's interesting because even when in Obi-Wan, there's that one character who's just like, she's one of the Imperial Guard. Imperial, like she's a
general, something,
general captain or something like that,
lieutenant
right?
or whatever.
Lieutenant, and so she's like, you know what? When I was part of the Empire, when I was part of the Galactic Army, this isn't what we did. Like, this is just wrong now. So I'm trying to help people, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and so to that I understand, and I think those kind of stories are kind of interesting because it's like now you're coming into this moral code where everything's changed, and you're just like, okay, now how do I justify this for myself so that I'm okay with this? And in some cases, I'm sure lots of people were just like, I gotta go. I'm out of here. I'm done. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Even at the expense of their own life, maybe say, I'd rather die than participate in this.
And also, just to one last thought on that, like the indoctrination part of it. Some people tend to be easier to be indoctrinated.
Sure.
Right. And some people are not. So maybe Finn was one of those people that, even though like at the beginning, he might have believed whatever they were teaching them. Eventually, he started to realize it's like, no. And then, right?
Well, so with him, as far as I know,
he was supposed to be force sensitive too at some point.
Oh yeah, that's true. So maybe that's kind of what allowed him to like sort of break the brainwashing, because he was brainwashed because he was taken away when he was
he was a kid,
when he was a baby essentially, and was brainwashed. But maybe because of the fact that he was supposed to be force sensitive, that was allowed. That's what allowed him to break away like, this connection with the force.
For sure.
So do you think would stormtroopers been capable of executing Order 66 if it came to the stormtroopers rather than the clone troopers?
I think
it all depends. I think
just an order, like they weren't pre-programmed with this chip or anything.
I mean, I think go ahead.
I think the majority would have said yes, okay, fine, or else someone's going to kill me, so I'm just going to go do it.
I agree. Yeah.
Now, whether or not they'd be actually able to hit them is a different story, because clearly they're not very good at it. This is my thing with the stormtroopers. You just cannot shoot a rock if your life depended on it. So I'm pretty sure most of the Jedi would have survived. But yeah, I think a lot of them would have. I feel like some of them wouldn't, but the majority, I think, would just kind of okay. Well, that's
even
what
without implants, right?
Yeah.
Like just by sheer will,
just following orders.
Just following orders.
And no, maybe we've hit upon a reasoning for their poor aim. There is because
they're conflicted.
Well, no, because they're.
They just weren't trained as well, I guess.
They weren't trained as well. They were built up fast.
Yeah.
They were, but also their motivation isn't as part of a. They don't see themselves as a force for good. They are. They don't have the ethics and values of a proper military organization. And their motivation and incentive is, there's an officer standing behind me with a gun to my head.
Yeah.
Right.
And so maybe that's why they're such bad soldiers.
Yeah.
Well, luckily for the Empire, there's no space Geneva Convention.
Yeah, exactly.
Space law of armed conflict.
Because
because that's kind of the guiding principle that
Our current military runs by.
Yeah,
right?
well, but if they don't have like, the empire doesn't have a set of ethics and values that they require their soldiers to adhere to. So it's basically the culture of the empire is kill everybody. So there's where we get into the question of, are the stormtroopers culpable? Yes, they are, because they have free will, and even if they've got a gun to their head, they can still make a choice whether they're going to do something unlawful or immoral or die.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, too, I think maybe this whole question of the stormtroopers who can't hit anything. The clones, where Jango Fett obviously was a good shot because he's a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
So they're all just basically copies of him.
Yeah.
Enhanced copies.
Enhanced copies. So they all have the same ability.
Yeah.
Whereas the stormtroopers, they're just random people with all different types
random.
of levels
exactly.
of skills.
So you know they're not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Mind you, and that's why you get like the elite stormtroopers that are better,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have like the different levels of them that go out. Those were pilots. Those are this. Those are that.
for sure.
And that totally makes sense. But I don't know.
I guess it's just like military today, Tony, right? Based on your skill set, you get shoved into different roles.
Yeah, there's different levels of soldier. There's your combat arms, artillery, engineers, infantry, armor, and that's your it's your standard soldier, and they do the bulk of the fighting. But then you've got special forces and snipers and pioneers and all those that have special skill sets that commanders can exploit in the positive sense of the word, based on the mission.
I was going to say, even when you're looking at like Andor, they talk about the different stormtroopers, that one who's chasing after him and all of that. But these are some of the people who join the Empire and the military. They're just like, well, this is good. We are for good because we control and we bring order to the universe. So we are clearly on the right, because no matter what it takes, we have to bring order. And so they may not understand the order or the orders that are given to them, but they feel like there's this overarching sense of, but we're maintaining order. So this has to help with that idea and that ideology of it, right? So even then, I still think that they would be culpable for it, because if you're going to just sort of pass the buck, then that doesn't mean that you're not culpable for it.
But I can see how this was all part of, we talk about Palpatine's grand plan, how, maybe ridiculous it may seem, but as you think about it, you go, okay, if he was like, okay, if we want to sort of take over and rule, how do I create the least amount of resistance to this? Well, let's create a horrible, long-going war, and then get to a point where people are just tired of war. They just don't want war anymore. They'll take, as long as there's sort of law and order, we'll take that. So as the Empire marches in, they're like, okay, at least someone's in charge. We're not fighting. I'll take it. And maybe that's, you could see how people will be like, okay, I'll be part of the law and order scenario. At least there's, if you don't step out of line, you'll be fine.
You get 3 square meals, you're good, you don't have to worry about anything. You just gotta follow these orders every once in a while, or
you might be sent to your death.
You cross the line a little bit.
There's this fear of death on you all the time, but
or like in the case of like we saw in Andor, he was just walking in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then he's like,
that's the downside.
You go to jail.
Exactly.
So,
well, this actually gets to a bigger question. We're going to talk about this more in a whole separate episode. But so if you consider like clone troopers, especially, were treated as disposable assets, and particularly by their Jedi commanders. Some, like you were saying, Jesus, had some consideration or empathy, but generally there was very little regard for their well-being or individual rights. It was just go, fight, die, whatever. So, the Jedi just saw them as tools of war and replaceable and expendable. They just kept ordering more clones. So is this whole thing at odds with the fundamental Jedi philosophy?
100%.
Like, this is really...
Disagree.
No, I disagree with you, Tony. Just because I think, like the main thing about the Jedi Order is like they're not supposed to be war machines. Like they're not supposed to be fighters, right? Like they're supposed to be the keepers of the peace. Somehow, through the whole planning of Palpatine and the Clone Wars, they got dragged into this as having to do the right thing, and then they became generals and like actually war people. But they're. I'm not saying they're perfect, and I'm not saying like the whole Jedi Order has the right mentality or like their sets of principles are what's supposed to be.
But this was supposed to be the downfall of the Jedi Order, right?
Exactly. So they went and they did exactly the opposite that they were supposed to be doing.
Yes. They're supposed to preserve the peace.
Yes.
And this is pretty much
But
not
not
that.
through fighting.
Not through
a war.
No.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
So,
the point of a Jedi with their lightsaber and so on and so forth is for protection of those around them.
Yes.
But to diffuse situations, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but of course, Tony, you disagree with the statement in the first place.
Yeah, Jesus, let me tell you why you're wrong. So you're sitting there one day, and all of a sudden you've been given this army.
Mm-hmm.
They need leadership. To the best of my knowledge, the Cassians, the people who made the clones, Caminos. That's it.
Planet. I don't know what you call them, but the planet's Camino.
Yeah. They didn't create generals and commanders and a leadership.
No.
They didn't create that. It's just you've got the raw troops. They need to be led. Planning needs to be done. All that stuff. Logistics. The whole shooting match.
Yeah.
And the only people that were available to do that kind of thing, what I would say was the Jedi, which were basically the police force or peacekeepers, because by definition police are supposed to keep the peace.
Yeah.
So there's we have to give these troops leadership somehow. So who you got? You got the Jedi. So we use them. And then the other thing you're wrong about is when we talk about using the clones and sending them to their death. Unfortunately, that's just a facet of war.
Yes,
it's universality of service, right? Like soldiers understand when they sign up that they can be ordered to do anything, even that could result in their death. So Jedi's fighting battles where they understand that clones are going to die, that's just war.
The thing is that when you look at the point of view from the Jedi and how they are supposed to exist,
and behave,
like what being a Jedi is, it is very counter to being a army general.
Yeah.
Like it really doesn't mesh. They are forced into this position again by Palpatine. Right? This is, once you get into it, this is how intricate his whole plan is, because he sees this war as a way to not only pull an empire out of it that he would completely control, but to really, really just completely destroy the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
Like he really is taking them out completely by totally ruining their cause, by taking them down to this position where this ability to just send people to their death, to completely not care about life, regardless of whether it's a clone or not, that is really against the whole Jedi concept.
Thing.
And there's
and it distracts them from seeing the rise of the dark side.
of course.
Yeah, for sure.
That's probably part of
They didn't
Palpatine's
even
plan
think-
all along.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't even know that the Sith were around.
Even a possibility.
Yeah.
Well, obviously with Darth Maul, they're like, okay, something's going on.
Something's up.
But we're not going to, look into this more because, well, we've got now this big, huge war that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
And there's another episode in Clone Wars where Ahsoka meets these orphans who hate the Jedi, right? And that's kind of part of it, right? Like they become like this evil force amongst the people because it's just like
they were totally doing the opposite thing that we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and it's like they're not keeping the peace. Look at me. My life is horrible and ruined because they keep doing this, that, and the other, and they're clamping down on everyone.
Yeah.
And so it really is very counter to the concept of Jedi as a whole, and that's the whole point of the prequels, is that they are so lost that they can't see the evil in front of them.
In front of them.
Right. Literally,
right
like,
in front of them. Yeah, and
looking
even
them
like
in the eye.
Yeah, the whole clone thing too. It's like now we're starting to realize that it's the same thing about Palpatine trying to find a way of extending his life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then coming
Yeah.
back and somehow Palpatine returned.
Yeah, and somehow Palpatine is really the bad guy, even at Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay.
I know. It kind of makes sense when you kind of look at it like, okay, this was all the plan. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But just the way that was executed maybe was a bit weird.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think to your point, Sudhir, it's interesting you say that because it makes you think, okay, if Palpatine was that calculating, you'd say, well, how can I mask? Because a lot of his plan was grooming Vader, right?
Yeah.
Grooming Vader to be his the second Sith.
Yeah.
Because they're only supposed to be two.
Two. They can only be
it.
two.
Yeah.
So how can I mask or hide his descent to the dark side? Well, I'll just make all the Jedi
Yeah.
go to the dark side essentially,
Yeah.
or travel down the dark path by drawing them into this war.
Yeah.
So so they're all in it. They can't see that Anakin's changing.
Yeah.
He's just out fighting. It's good he's kind of gone to the dark side
Yeah.
Because then he's winning.
He's winning the war.
He's doing the job that needs to be done.
So it was
Right.
like, we don't mind. But he's winning all these battles, so we'll just kind of
They,
look the other way.
they don't look at it because it's like, okay, well, it's just making him angrier and angrier and just like really pushing him. But it's like, hey, he's a good general. He's getting stuff done. Hey, you got a problem. We'll send in that Anakin kid. He'll get it done.
He'll get it done.
I don't know how, but he gets it done. And that's the thing, right? So you kind of see all these things, and it when you get into those like kind of like the really intricate parts of Star Wars, whether it's the prequels or whatever, you really get to see Palpatine's plan, right? And how it sort of like these tentacles that go everywhere and all that, right?
Yeah, which
Anakin
is crazy.
Skywalker, he's a real self-starter.
Oh yeah. Look at him go! Like wow.
Self-directed.
Self-directed. Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap this one up for now because we're gonna transition to the next episode because we're gonna go right into then this Jedi question.
Okay.
And basically the overarching thing is, are the Jedis the heroes we thought they were? So that's an interesting question. But to finish this one off, say the Clone Troopers and the Stormtroopers both did horrible things. Clone Troopers maybe a bit more because they massacred all the Jedi, but Stormtroopers were used to do many despicable things as well. Are they both as individuals redeemable, or one or the other, or neither?
I think the actual Stormtroopers are, in my opinion, are worse than the Clone Troopers, even though they did Order 66.
Right, because theoretically they had free will to some extent.
To a certain point, like Order 66, that's not free will at all. Like they were made to do something.
Yes.
If you had I think if you had told them to do this without that, they probably wouldn't have done it.
No.
I'm sure a good cross section
They
would.
wouldn't have done it. Yeah,
and then
for sure.
there's a bunch of them who are just like, no, that's a dumb idea.
Yeah, we're not going
Right.
to kill our friends because that's at one point, like the Jedis were talking to them like people.
Yes.
Yeah.
They weren't numbers, they were people.
And again, that goes back to this other idea. Okay, well, there were some Jedi who kind of saw them as like disposable like
for sure.
soldiers who
For
could just
sure.
like throw into a horrible situation. Like, okay, we'll figure it out. Those ones would probably have been killed. But the other ones who kind of just who saw them as people and who cared about them and did things to make sure that they came home with them would be the ones who would survive. And I think those are the ones who are going to be sort of like that. But yeah, I think it's the stormtroopers who decide to become soldiers in this army who go off and do all these horrible things. They're unredeemable comparatively to the clone troopers.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
So if you could say rescue and deprogram a clone and they just kind of reset to a normal person, or you'd have to sort of take a stormtrooper and forgive them. You can't really, there's no programming to take out. But
Well, I mean, Rex does that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Rex is able to like get out of his programming, obviously, with a lot of help. But then, then he goes off and does all these other amazing things with the Rebels in the Rebel series, right?
Yeah.
So, if you can forgive Rex as a character, then that shows that the clone army is forgivable to a degree.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, with Finn, you forgot. He must have done things that we don't know that were probably bad.
So you forgave
But then you
him.
forgave him.
Yeah.
Because at one point you realize, okay, it wasn't his fault, even though like he did it.
You kind of got the idea with Finn. I'm not sure if this is true. I don't know. Just based on like when he's first deployed, you see him and he's deployed to go
Yeah.
kill these villagers on that.
That he
planet.
didn't actually
You
do
could
it,
tell
yeah.
that this is all looked like the first time.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
he's like,
for
what?
sure,
No,
for
I'm not doing
That
this.
was
Sure,
yeah,
yeah.
apparently he says later on, like, oh, that was my first actual fight that I'd ever
got
been
it.
in.
Right.
And this is what happened. It was the death. What kind of triggered it from watching it a couple of times, it was the death of a friend of his or one of the other troopers who kind of
right.
snaps him out of
snap
it.
it out, yeah.
Because he's just like, whoa, wait a minute, people are dying. This is
what are
this
we
is
doing?
bad.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I can't
yeah.
deal with this.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see a series from the point of view of the Stormtroopers during the Empire and during Star Wars. Because I mean, we can forgive the clones, we can forgive Finn because we've seen their story.
Yeah.
We have not seen any
Well,
stories
that's the
of
thing,
any
is like, yeah,
Stormtroopers,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Because all we're going on is just like, well, I mean, look at all the things that they did during Star Wars, Empire, Return. They killed Ewoks for crying out loud. Those horrible human beings.
That's true.
So, you know, unless you can see who they are. And I think these kind of like these funny little short films about like these stormtroopers and their daily lives or their little funny little things that they do, that kind of is part of it.
Yeah.
But they're not real stories that kind of show the conflicts that they go through or that they have to deal with. And we don't get to see that. So I think because we haven't seen them being humanized, we really can't say.
Yeah, it's a bit. I totally.
You know
agree,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Well, it's like in Andor, we see the Empire. Or is the New Republic or the Empire and Andor?
It's the Empire.
Okay, so they're doing things, and there's all kinds of people in there, but
Yeah.
you're seeing them as humans, right? They might.
Yeah.
So some of them you see, oh shit, he not too crazy about this, or
Yeah,
she's just
yeah.
thinking that she's doing the right thing, and
Right.
So, but in individual cases, you might be able to say, oh, that's redeemable, that because they're still you seeing them as humans. With some trooper, we haven't.
Yeah, we
gotten
haven't
there.
had that.
Yeah.
That whole
Well,
conversation.
even Cassian in Andor kills people.
Yeah, exactly.
For a means
yeah.
to an end.
So it's never
Yeah.
going to be black
He
and
murders
white.
people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But that was the thing is that's kind of why I liked Rogue One, right? Because he stands there and he's
Yeah.
just like, I have done things that, you know, no one should have to do, but
Yeah.
because it had to be done,
Yeah.
I did them. And he is not redeemable, essentially, at the end of the day, is his point. And he's like, if I do this, then I can kind of be redeemed by helping and going after these plans and all this
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think that's a conversation that we've never had about the rebellion. Right? We never get to see it. And that's why Andor is such an important series, is because you get to see the Rebel Alliance from not a great angle.
Yes.
Right? You get to
it
see
wasn't
all the-
just all noble and
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, it's not just all Luke Skywalker running
Yeah.
around saying we're gonna go get those bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, you have to.
Well,
yeah,
yeah, in any conflict, there's no, like, everything the Rebel Alliance did was not good, and everything
Yeah.
the Empire did was not bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know, you can. It's not on Earth and in space. Nothing is black and white.
Exactly. But that's the thing, is that I think everyone looks at it that way because that's how we kind of want to see it.
Yeah.
But that's why these stories are so important, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how Lucas built it too.
Yeah.
Right? You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Very much so.
Clearly the Empire is based on the Nazis.
Yes.
And
Yes.
clearly
Yeah.
the
pretty
Rebel
much.
Alliance is based on the Allies or the French Resistance or whoever you want to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, exactly. And for his stories, it's very black and white, good versus evil. But, you know, if you really want to make it into more of a universe, that's not reality.
That's not how it works.
Yeah. Like, I mean, there are, like, I think at one point there is, I feel like it's a throwaway line, and I don't remember what episode or what series this was in, but there was someone who talked about the Empire being good because they actually helped their planet or something to that effect. There is a throwaway line where it's just like, yeah, but, you know, my planet is better for it. And to Tony's point, yeah, sometimes they're going to do things that are good.
Yeah.
right.
It's in their self-interest to do it. In certain cases, maybe they had a resource that they needed, and they we'll just make everything good here.
Yeah.
But generally, yeah, like, I mean,
Well, it would be, you know, if you just change the names of the players in Star Wars from the Rebel Alliance and the Empire to the government and the police and a terrorist organization, it takes on a completely different vibe.
oh yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
for sure.
it really does. Like, I mean, that's really what it is. Like, you don't see it that way, but the rebels are terrorists.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why the
100%, yeah.
Empire as a governing body would say,
Yeah.
we're trying to control terrorism. If,
Yeah.
if you said to the people on the planet, we're here to protect you.
Yeah.
We're going to eliminate terrorism activity and terrorists. We're going to take them out. You'd be like, great.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. You should do more of that.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Okay. Any final words, you guys, before we finish it off?
I have some. Yeah.
Okay.
Tony, people from Camino are called Caminoan.
Camino.
Caminoans?
Caminoans.
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 I
Good
see.
to know.
There we go.
Okay.
That's it. I'm done.
That's it. That's all we got.
There's a little kernel.
Stormtroopers, not great. Clone troopers, they're okay. First order troopers, they're kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, they're like really
Yeah.
grouchy, tired, angry stormtroopers. Aren't
Yeah,
they?
pretty
First
much.
stormtroopers.
Pretty much. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Underfed, underpaid.
Exactly.
Do they get paid?
No.
Do you think?
I don't
know.
think. See, no, that's a question that we never touched on. I don't think the clones got paid.
No.
I'm guessing the stormtroopers got paid.
They have to. I mean,
They'd have to buy stuff.
unless they live in their facilities and they're being fed, and then everything's being given to them. But
I would assume that the stormtroopers are getting paid. I don't think the first order troopers are getting paid.
No, they just look
They
like they're
need
glad
to. They need to buy stuff in the Death Star 7-Eleven.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
space
yeah.
Slurpees.
I know.
And,
Yeah.
you know, chocolate bars.
Yeah.
I know. They must have days off.
I mean, yeah.
You
What
would
about
think.
their video games and stuff? So
Yes.
I mean, someone's they gotta pass the time.
Yeah.
They can't just sit there and
And do
do
nothing.
training
Yeah,
practice.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
I know. We got into this a while ago too, and it'll be funny to do a whole episode. Just go the realistic logistics of running the empire.
Oh my god,
God.
that would be crazy. Yeah.
Can you imagine the logistics of just running the Death Star?
I know.
Forget the
exactly.
Empire,
It's
man.
just like, oh my god.
All the meetings.
No,
you have to go to.
yeah, like facilities. Yeah, facilities meetings. They're
Yeah.
trying to keep it all clean.
And do they have an HR department?
I know.
on the Death
it's
Star?
like, oh god, they do. An SNL they showed it. So.
Oh, see, there you go. Yeah.
Inappropriate touching.
Yeah.
Come in
Yeah,
HR.
yeah. you
Yeah.
never know.
Oh, yeah.
So, by the way, Fun Timbit, Omega from Bad Batch is the only clone from that. I think it was Boba Fett's clone, like the only out of all the clones, she's like the perfect match. Yeah. So
Okay.
she's but it's a female though.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Right.
enhanced female. Yeah.
you
But I can't remember if it's a clone of Boba Fett or Jango Fett.
Oh,
That's the only thing I'm not 100%.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Interesting.
All right, we will leave it there. Just to say that it's just a big mess. We have no idea. But there's no answer to these questions.
I don't think we're
It's
any
not black
further
and
along
white. Yeah.
than when we started.
I was going to come up with a conclusion for our opinions, but I don't think I can come up with one.
Yeah.
It's just, everybody's awful and
Yeah.
culpable, but they're
Whereas hell.
ultimately maybe redeemable. I don't know.
Some maybe, some not so much.
yeah. Well, if Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader can be redeemable, anybody should be redeemable because he slaughtered children. And,
Yeah.
so
And
if
that-
they can make that okay.
Honestly, and I'm still on the fence on that one.
You don't think he should be?
No, I really don't. I have to, in order for me to accept the end of Return of the Jedi with Darth Vader, I have to disconnect it from the prequels.
True.
That's the only way it works for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because it's like Darth Vader is probably my favorite character of all time, and I know he's a bad guy, and he did a lot of bad things, but still, like, I'm like, yes, no, I want to be Darth Vader.
I just don't want to do the things that got him there.
I mean,
But
sometimes
I'll
you
be-
got to do what you got to do. So,
Okay. Remind me not to turn my back on you
Yeah, exactly.
at any point.
so yeah, don't give me a lightsaber.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't piss you off. All right. Well, thanks very much, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a bit all over the place, but that was a fun topic. Very complex. We could probably talk about that for another hour. Thanks, Sudhir. Thanks for being with us again. That was
Thank
great.
you. That was great.
Thanks, Jesus.
Thank you.
for hosting, and thanks, Tony.
Anytime.
And thank you for being here and listening once again, as I said. And we really appreciate you being here. It's fun to know that people are out there listening. We have listeners all over the place, which is pretty cool. I mean, we shouldn't do a video podcast. We don't look good enough for that.
Talk about yourself.
Well, you,
Yeah.
Jesus does.
I don't know, Scott. They would never be released. Then you'd just be fussing with this. with
I
that.
know. Tell me about it.
Yeah, no.
I know.
It'll
Yeah.
I'd be mostly fussing with my hair. Sorry, I need another 4 hours.
Yeah.
Hair and makeup. Okay, we'll say goodbye for now. Hope you join us for the next episode, and we will see you again soon. Take care. Bye for now.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Lightsaber Lounge. You can follow and message us on Instagram at Lightsaber Lounge. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a new episode. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and may the Force be with you.
Alien life form detected.